Hi again, this is Peter from Mary Queen of the Apostles Parish in Salem, Massachusetts. This is my weekly reflection on the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist for Palm Sunday 2021. Since it's the beginning of Holy Week, I hope you get the chance to consider this reflection later in the week as well. Today's Gospel reading is the long Passion reading, the one that kids, like when I remember doing, groaning about. Why is this one so long? There's so much in this gospel to reflect upon, but I'm not going to focus on the obvious, the Last Supper. Instead, I'll share some thoughts about one event in Holy Week that is significant to me personally, and that's the agony in the garden. So why the agony in the garden? Well, if you want to understand the depth of God's mercy, and its connection to the Blessed Sacrament, begin with what happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. Why was Jesus troubled and distressed, as we hear in today's Gospel? Why was he sorrowful, even to death? I personally don't think it was just the knowledge of his coming death. I think it had to do with the knowledge of our suffering. Because I think Jesus' human nature needed to know and experience our suffering so that he could accept bearing it in our place. He needed to see the cup that the Father was giving him so then he could pray, "Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Take this cup away from me, but not what I will, but what you will." So what is the suffering of ours that he sees? Well, I think that suffering is the consequence of sin. It's the separation from the source of love and life itself. It's an eternal encounter with the absence of God, with nothingness, being separated forever, both from him and from whatever we chose instead of him. It's an eternal longing for what we can't have, knowledge that we will never have it, and eternal regret of our choice, and worse. In short, it's the greatest suffering imaginable. So if you love someone dearly, as Jesus does each one of us, seeing them suffer should provoke great sorrow. And I think Jesus is seeing all of humanity, his own creation that he loves, separated from himself. He sees just how blind we are and becomes sorrowful even to death. Now, St. John Paul II told us, suffering provokes mercy. And the greatest suffering, therefore, would provoke the greatest mercy. So after praying in the garden, as Jesus is about to be arrested, he says, "Get up, let us go," to the other apostles. He wasn't dragged off to be killed. He chose to take up the cross on which he entered right into our suffering, to bear that suffering and heal us. Those wounds are for you and me, your friends, your family, your enemies, and those who persecute and hate you and injure you. He told us to take up our crosses and follow him there. So how does this relate to the Eucharist? Well, the glorified body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus is present in the Eucharist. And as we will hear in 2 weeks on Divine Mercy Sunday, that glorified body, both then and therefore in the Eucharist, has wounds, eternal wounds, the wounds that bear our sufferings that Jesus saw in the garden. The Eucharist is the one and the same sacrifice for which the final stage begins as Jesus leaves the Garden of Gethsemane. Through his death and resurrection, he overcame our death, but the wounds from his mercy are still there. So I offer this reflection for today. When you enter into whatever form of worship you can participate in today, Whether you go to Mass in person, attend live online, listen on the radio, or watch a recording, before receiving communion or performing a spiritual communion, say to yourself, get up, let's go. And then after consuming the Blessed Sacrament, remember what Jesus said, he will remain in us and we will remain in him. Imagine your body being transformed into, becoming one with, the glorified body of Christ, complete with his wounds. Imagine your hands and feet wounded, your heart pierced, blood and water, Jesus' fountain of divine mercy, flowing out from Jesus' heart through you for someone else. And then ask yourself one question. Who are my wounds for? May God bless you. Have a wonderful Holy Week, and see you next week.